Hello and welcome to It's My Life. It's not really about my life, but the life of my guest. And I'm your host, Chaya Srivatsa.
Yes.
So I want to talk about Usha R K,
Okay.
who's in the art space.
Sure.
So let's go back to how you got in there and what did you do to get there?
Okay. I had learned dance from a very young age when I was born and brought up in Bombay. So I learned dance there from the, famous Natwanar family, which started the Rajarajeshwari
Kalyan Sundaram.
Bharatanatyam. Yes.
Yeah,
I learned from his older brother and brother-in-law, Mahalingam Pillai and Govindaraj Pillai. And then eventually came to Kalyan Sundaram sir for a couple of years, after which I shifted to Bangalore.
Okay.
And I came from a family where, it was not so great to perform, but because I was interested, my parents allowed me to learn. And also I was studying college like every other child. So at that point, I told my father that I wanted to do a lot of research. Mm-hmm. And for that meant that I should know more. So I started going to different teachers, to understand their styles. So I remember going to Kittappa Pillai, he used to be here in Vishweshwarpuram at Padmini Rao's house. Mm-hmm. And I went to him and I said, sir, I just want to learn 2 items. So he said, why? Mm-hmm. So I said, no, I just want to understand your style, how it is constructed, what is your style about, and why you do certain things in your choreography. So he found that very interesting and he said, I'm going away to Tanjore, but you can learn from Narmada. She's my student. You can learn 2-3 items from her. So I went to Narmada and I learned, a couple of Varnams and a Tillana just to understand their construct. And then I was very fascinated by the Kalakshetra style. Mm-hmm. While many traditional dancers, they sort of rejected the Kalakshetra style because it was like a very scientific and uniform kind of a style. Everybody performed the same way. But there is something that fascinated me in terms of the training method, where every child is taught the basics with a lot of precision and perfection. So at the end of the day, you have a whole batch of students who are of the same caliber, who are good and who are neat in certain manners. Okay. Whereas at an individual level, if you're learning from different teachers, each student is different from the other. Whereas here you had a batch full of students who were equally good.
But is it good or bad? It doesn't be like a cookie cutter thing it'll become, isn't it?
No. At the beginning part of a career, I think you have to have certain basics in place. Okay. Just like how education is uniform in terms of books and, in terms of subjects. Yeah. So it protects the standard. And then what happens is as you grow, you mature as an artist and then you start putting your individuality into it. Okay. So we've had various, the Dhananjayans are different from how Krishnaveni did, or, Leela is different from how Krishnaveni danced, or every Kalakshetra dancer who has come of her own has been different from each other. Mm-hmm. But the basic standard, the basic quality, that has been kept intact, and that is wonderful because you don't have one student doing fabulously and the other student you can't even bear to watch. Okay. That is the case in many other individual schools. It happens. But this sort of, in the basics, they take care. So I went to Adayar Lakshman, who used to come to Bangalore in those days to teach at the Theosophical Society over the weekends. Mm-hmm. So he used to come here Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there was Sushila Mehta. There were many dancers from Bangalore who used to learn from him. And so I just went to him and I told him what my, urge was. So he said, but you have to start from the beginning. Because if that's what you want to understand, the basics, you start from the beginning. Basics. So from Tayate, I started there. And it was very different for me because I had learned from a different Bani or school. And there were a lot of changes. So I used to find very complicated. But somehow I used to practice, and he said, you have to practice this to get it, So I used to go there on the weekends and stay there and practice. And then I learned 2 very, very beautiful Varnams, which famous for Kalakshetra. Considering that, I trained there for a while and I understood the entire philosophy of Kalakshetra in terms of the basics and the training, which I really enjoyed. All these things just added to my knowledge base, and it also added to my outlook of dance. It never made me feel that somebody who did something was doing wrong. They were all doing right. because invariably if you learn a particular style and in your style you do it in a particular way, if you see somebody else do the same thing differently, you think they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
But that
it's
was
not
not
only
the point.
about dance, isn't it, Usha? Because in anything, if somebody is different from us, we think, why are they doing something different? We think
but then it calls for you to understand why they're doing it.
That's why diversity, inclusivity, all those words have generated.
Absolutely. So all this happened, and at some point, I think I was in my pre-university, and I'd already started writing for a tabloid magazine which is very popular in Bangalore called City Tab. I enjoyed that stint of mine. I used to write regularly on dance and music. And then one day I just got an offer, and somebody asked me, he said, since you know a lot of dancers and musicians, can you help us organize something? And I said, yeah, let's look at it. So Mysore Town Hall was 100 years.
Okay.
And they wanted to do a month-long celebration. So I met this mayor of Mysore, one Mr. Iyengar, through some friends, and he asked me, he said, Usha ji, can you help us? And I said, okay. And then I started organizing, and that was also partly funded by ITC. Mm-hmm. That's how I met ITC, Okay. And then they were doing a lot of culture. So I slowly slipped into the role of organizing because I had the knowledge. I was good in administration and I knew the artists. So it made life more simpler for others. And
for you to call them, come and do this.
Yeah. So then I started organizing, and then I never looked back. I think I sort of just kept working towards that. And then I moved on. I worked with ITC closely for nearly about 12 to 13 years, doing various festivals.
What was their interest in culture? Because they're basically a tobacco company and hotels, isn't it?
At that point
and
it
now
was
they've
more
got
tobacco.
ready to eat foods, and at that time it was more tobacco.
More tobacco, and they were just setting up other companies. But for them, because they couldn't advertise, this was surrogate advertising, and they did it. It was, if you look at it nationally, surrogate advertising at its best was when ITC was doing all that.
Yes.
So they did a lot of, and every brand, they worked so beautifully. For example, Gold Flake. They said it was for the gracious people. If you look at marketing, technique, it would be marketing, philosophy. It would be that you look at the target audience and what they would like, and so this is what they would appreciate, and so you give them that. And similarly, they looked at all the branding like that. And so Gold Flake primarily was for culture. It was the byline was very interesting. It was for the gracious people. So we did theatre, we did dance, we did music, and anything and everything that was associated with an upmarket look.
And you took care of all those, even theatre.
Some theatre.
Music.
Yes, I did some theatre, not all, but I did some plays with Nasiruddin Shah and Satyadev Dubey.
So were you an event manager, or is it there is another nomenclature for that?
At that point, there was nothing like an event manager, or there wasn't an event industry actually. So it was just like a promotions for brands. Marketing promotions, they called it.
And what was Usha called?
I didn't have any designation or anything, but at that point in time, a lot of people talking about words like impresario. And it had just come down from the West here, and everybody thought that the idea was to present the artists in a good light.
And that's why impresario.
So that happened for a while, and I continued organizing. I also did other companies like Britannia.
Yes, they also.
I organized a huge festival called Raga Tala, which was very popular in Bangalore for nearly 6 years. It was a corporate image building exercise for Britannia, and we presented right from MS Subbalakshmi to Alara Khaji, and we had Balamurli ji, Kishori ji. We had some of the best performers of MS Gopalakrishnan.
And you were coordinating all this with the artists and
the
with the
entire festival. I would conceive it, I would present it to the company, they would like the theme, and then we would do it.
And Usha, for this, the kind of skill or expertise you needed was the fact that you were an ardent dancer.
Yeah.
And you went around not really looking for business, but you wanted to upgrade your own skills and your
it was
own
more about
styles.
At that point, I think, we had this whole urge of this very important phrase in our lives, which was promotion and propagation of classical arts. this was like one huge thing for us. So we all wanted to work towards that.
When you say we all, you mean all the artists?
Artists, and I had a lot of other colleagues who worked with me in different parts of India, where we sort of collaborated and knew each other, and we helped each other also. So in those days, while I was doing all this, I met Pratima. Pratima's parents lived next door to my house in Bombay, and I knew her younger sister Ashita. We were young girls, and we were all sort of very, in
fascinated
awe of her.
By her. Yeah,
because she used to, zip in and out, and she used to drive her own car, and she used to wear halter necks, and all that. So we were in that, kind of an awe position when we looked at her and say, wow. And then when I came here and I met her at Prasad Bidappa's office, she wanted somebody to compare her festival, and at the Ravindra Kalakshetra, and along with, Kabir was going to come and compare too, and I thought there's a lifetime chance for me to, speak a few words along with the fabulous Kabir Bedi. And she just came here to establish Nrityagram. Nrityagram was about dance and about gurus, about Guru Shishya Parampara. I had been exposed to the ITC Sangeet Research Academy, which runs the music institution with the same theme of Guru Shishya Parampara, and I was very impressed by her presentation. And I thought here was something for dance, while Kalakshetra was a single style institution, here was an institution that could be built for multiple styles. And
but wasn't she doing mostly Odissi?
No, she was an Odissi dancer, but our plan was to have 7 Gurukuls, which was the 7 classical forms. And she had already identified some of the gurus for the other styles, along with Kelu Babu for Odissi. So first was Odissi, because that was her style and she was performing. Pratima always said this to me. She said, Usha, do you know this is the story of the camel and the tent. So you volunteered to help me, and I said, yeah, but I don't have a place, and so can I come and use your house as the office? And then from the house, it became her house. She stayed with me in Malleshwaram 15th Cross, and her car used to always be there down with the logo of Nithya Gram on it.
I remember that, her zipping with
red color Maruti. And then we started working, and it was at a feverish, pace that we worked, because the first Gurukul was coming up. We were searching for grants. We were making presentations to companies, and building was going on one side. There were, whole lot of issues on the land. There were snakes and what have you. And then at one point, she decided she'd shift there. Caravan, like a moving caravan. It was a canter. It was just a unit which was there, and inside that was a little bed and a little kitchen and what have you.
Okay.
And she moved in there, and then she set up a tent also, and she just said, now I have to stay here and do the work. And it was amazing. Working with her was like a lifetime experience for me.
Could be,
Yeah, because, much to the displeasure of many people, they had a whole lot of things to say about her, but I think she was one of the, she was a great CEO, as I always said to her. I said, she just could manage everything so beautifully. She had great contacts. She knew how to keep the contacts alive. She was very, very large-hearted. That's something which you rarely find. She was very large-hearted. She gave ample praise to everybody. She would appreciate people's work.
See, most people think being large-hearted means you dole out money. I don't think it's that. Large-hearted, like what you said just now. Yeah. You should have the humility to praise other people.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
She was very appreciative of everybody. Even if it was a cook, she was appreciative of them.
That is being large-hearted.
She always gave them space. She supported them in whenever they needed her. And that sort of endeared her to everybody. Everybody was willing to give their life for her. And she was like an enigma, in Hesarghatta. And she would just fly across,
She did a marvelous job with Nrityagram.
Yeah, when the first Gurukul was inaugurated, I remember 1 month before that, we were working very hard, and we met Ramakrishna Hegde, and he asked us, so who do you want, Pratima, to inaugurate Nrityagram? And she said, who else but the Prime Minister? I mean, we can't have anybody lesser than that. This is such a huge project, she said. So he said, okay, we'll get the Prime Minister. And how it worked, roads were being laid and telephone lines were coming up, and she was all over the place. From Chief Secretary's office, she would rush somewhere else. She'd go to PWD, she'll go here. She'll go to BWSSB for the water. She was all over the place, and single-handedly, with just a very, very skeletal staff. There was just me and my Mr. Radhakrishnan, who was helping in the finance and all that, and I was running around her like a secretary. And both of us, just between the two of us, we were handling everything. There was hardly, and of course, Gerard looked after the construction and the building and the project and all that. And we got all the gurus to come that day. We said we'll do a mini scene of how it would be if all the gurus were there. So we had Kelu Babu was there for Odissi. Then we had Kumudini Lakhya for Kathak. We had Mutswami Pillai for Bharatanatyam. Kalanidhi Narayanan came for the Abhinaya aspect of that. We had Bipin Singh. We had all these 7 gurus who she thought should be there, to teach. There was Kalyani Kuttiyamma and Krishnan Nair together. Right? The two doyens of Mohiniyattam and Kathakali.
Yeah.
They were all there. And then we took the Prime Minister. He inaugurated the first Gurukul.
Who was the Prime
VP
Minister?
Singh. And then he landed via the helicopter, and then we took him there. And then he walked through, from the first Gurukul, he walked through every little Gurukul that we just created like a temporary thing for him to see how it would be. So we had a guru with a few students of theirs performing, and he would go there, honor them, and then come to the main stage, which was the amphitheater, where we had the official inauguration where he spoke, and the entire function got over. And then Pratima said we should have a all-night festival. There's to be this all-night festival in Calcutta called Dover Lane, and she had performed in that, and she said, we don't have something like that in Bangalore. Yeah, so that's how Vasanta Habba came. We planned to do it in the season of Vasant. So she said, let's call it Basant something, and then Basant Utsav. And then I said, Radhakrishnan said, no, it's Utsav. Utsav is not the right word. We should use a Kannada word, because, that's when the locals feel happy here, Pratima. Already you're an outsider. So she said, yeah, let's use it. And she's very open to ideas. So immediately he said, Habba. Oh, this Habba sounds very nice to my ears. Let's call it Vasanta Habba. And that's how the name came up, And then, of course, a whole lot of activities that happened. And of course, I moved out from Nrityagram after about 4-5 years. And then I went on my own, doing other work in my career. But Nrityagram has always been one of the most fabulous experiences.
It's still doing
my
well,
life.
right?
But of course, a plan or a dream like that is obviously driven by the dreamer, and when she, moved out from this, this earthly planet, it was very difficult, I think, for a lot of people. Like, I went into a mild depression at that time because there were so many moments that I was recollecting with her.
Yeah.
And but also for a project like this, you need the driver to be, so passionate about it. But I still think they're doing, at least they're sustaining what has been made. That itself is a huge effort.
That's good enough.
Considering that we don't get funding for such organizations in our country. Kalakshetra somehow with its sort of
Rukmini
Arundale and her political connections sort of managed to get grants, and Nrityagram, I think, sort of just fell between the stools in that sense. It didn't get the kind of support it deserved.
Because I think everybody perceived Pratima Bedi as more a glamour film, that kind of she didn't have that stature of Rukmini Devi Arundale.
No, she didn't have.
That's why.
She didn't
but
have.
In spite of it,
in spite of that, she managed this much. I think it's very commendable. Also, like they say, whatever you do, it follows you through your life. So some of the events that happened in Pratima's life, whether it was her, running nude on the beach in
it was called streaking.
Yeah, the streaking. Those kind of her, that part of her life followed her everywhere.
You know.
And every time she tried to do something, she would always feel very bad, and she would say, how much ever I do, somewhere these things are not getting erased. They won't, but that's the way the world is.
This is a lesson. This is a lesson for everybody to, like small little things, because you'll never know how famous you'll become at one time. And these things follow you.
Yeah, that's why you have to be careful.
Careful right from your childhood.
Because
what you
see,
do
when she was not brought up in the kind of milieu for classical dance, like for example, we being a South Indian, like they say tam bram, we're all brought up in a certain way, and these things go unnoticed for us. Like for example, the way we dress, or the way we speak, or the way we are diplomatic, or the way we don't say things aloud. All these things are
Sure.
taught to us as a child.
It's ingrained.
Yeah, it's like for example, my grandmom would say, you don't have to stand there and stand for so long. I mean, there's so many people that just keep go do your work. When they said that, we would feel, why is she pushing us away like this? But actually there are so many other connotations to what happens when you just stand there and waste your time, or hear things, or react to certain things. You might just say something you don't need to. So all those the manner of upbringing is different, especially in South Indian families. Today of course it's become as modern as ever, but I'm talking about two generations ahead. I think they were all brought up like that. So if you are a dancer, there are lot of guidelines that you have from your teacher and your parents. So you won't behave like that. I mean, Pratima doesn't have all that background,
But in spite of it, I remember reading her book called Time Pass, which her daughter put together after her mother passed away. Memoirs, letters and things like that. It made very interesting reading, And where she says she was just taking shelter in Bhulabai Desai Auditorium in Mumbai because it was raining. And she heard
into the hall.
And she heard the music, and she was fascinated. And look what she did with it. See, that's what I admire about that. Anybody, not only Pratima, anybody, if they have a passion, even you, Usha, I mean, you wanted to learn different styles of dance. And look where you ended. Okay? And I think today's generation, they miss out on that.
See, somewhere this word called single-mindedness or single-minded devotion.
Nandana, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells. Arjuna,
the focus.
One-pointed determination.
Absolutely. That is very important. Like Pratima said, whatever happens, I have to. And when she was in this mode of Nrityagram, you always saw her dress so beautifully. You saw her in the mundus, you saw her in the saris. She was, she just lived that role. So she breathed that role. And that is what is so appreciable about her. For somebody who was brought up differently, who had no culture background in their family, for her to come out and
she went and stayed with Kelusharan Mahapatra.
Yes, and that was really hard for her.
And she's written about how he treated her. She had to sleep on the ground floor.
Yes.
Okay. So this is something called passion, which I think it's a great role model for younger generation. If they want to achieve something, this is what it should. And we wish you all the best. Usha, thanks a lot for being with us here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And